So I'd like to thank the organizers for this wonderful opportunity to come back to ITAMP and see so many friends. I'd like to say that my title is more ambitious than the content I have. I am, if I would have, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. If I would have had more time, I would have tried to put more physics into the talk.
Maybe a little back. I have a question.
Okay.
Reactor of science, for me, look as a master of knowledge. Could you explain what?
Master of the universe? No. So, yeah. So this is a wonderful title. I enjoy it very much. At a user facility, you have many people responsible for many different jobs. And this job is responsible for the quality of the scientific output from the user facility. So this means I have a role in developing the requirements for the facility for future procurement of supercomputers working with users to understand that the requirements that are specified to as the basis for the procurement of future machines are what they should be. And then I'm responsible for, I have a role in the selection of the user projects that actually get to run on the machine. And then I'm very much involved in celebrating the successes of the science projects and communicating them to the community and to the public. Is this a good answer?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I thought you were going to start talking about cross-country skiing. No.
My last question. I will ask you this.
This is we had an experience. So here's what I will try to present you. Hopefully you'll find some of it interesting. I'll give, as a prologue, I'll try to say what I've been doing over the last 17 years since I left ITAMP, and some of my different experiences. And then I'm going to go on to talk about the program, Leadership Computing in the U.S. Department of Energy, and then show some things that I prepared for a session that Phil Stansel organized at DayMOP 2013 last year, in which he invited me to talk about supercomputing. And at the end, I'll try to recruit some of you to be some of my users. So I came to ITAMP after finishing my Ph.D. in residence at Oak Ridge. My degree is from Vanderbilt. In 1994, very thrilled to be here. I can remember after coming from a Department of Energy lab studying lots about collision science and in the context of fusion and other topics, I remember asking Rick Heller, I said, why are all these people studying Bose-Einstein condensation? And his answer to me at the time was, well, they think there's a Nobel Prize in it, right? So it was a pretty good answer, right? During my time here as a postdoctoral fellow, I developed relationships with many people. I'll just try to highlight 3 topics here as a summary. And then after I finished my postdoc, I went back to Oak Ridge as a Wigner Fellow. This is one of these laboratory named fellowships that the DOE labs. And for a season, I tried to continue some of the themes I developed here. After a while, I gave up and moved on to material science. But my thesis was in the electron-positron pair production in relativistic heavy-ion collisions, not cold collisions, anti-cold collisions. This was a process that was driving beam stability at the relativistic heavy-ion collider. It's a pair production and capture cross-section that actually grows at high energy because the electron that's being captured comes from the negative energy continuum, and since you can dig deeper and deeper into the continuum, there is a logarithmic growth in the cross-section that at some time, along with a Coulomb dissociation of a heavy ion, would be the driving beam loss mechanism at this big DOE facility. And this was my introduction to parallel computing. Chris Botcher was the intellectual leader of the project and the person who introduced me to ITAMP when I came here in 1989 for the first time as a pre-doctoral fellow. And then Chris encouraged me very much until he left us all too soon in 2003. While I was here, Bilha Segev came as a Rothschild Fellow and was here for 2 years and she had an interest in strong field phenomena, and we collaborated also on this topic of pair production and produced 2 or 3 very satisfying papers, very intellectually satisfying papers for me. Bilha stayed for a season after I left, and then she went back to Israel and had a faculty position at Beersheba, and I just want to remember her here for a moment because I miss her. I also collaborated with people well known to this community, Dave Schultz, Predrag Kristich, and Mitch Pinzola, on some more traditional collision topics in terms of heavy particle collisions. The dominant theme here was a numerical solution to the Schrodinger equation on a lattice, similar to the solution of the Dirac equation that was pursued for the pair production problem. And then the other topic that I picked up from collaborators here with Yonel Simbotin, whose name has already appeared on the screen once this morning, and also Mihai Gavrila on a topic that for which Mihai was a pioneer, is light-induced states and intense laser matter interactions, a topic I found very, very stimulating. So after my fellowship, I joined a BES, DOE Office of Science, Basic Energy Sciences funded center called the Center for Engineering Science and Advanced Research. And this was my introduction to nanotechnology and nanoscience. And this program was very fun because we got to look at topics like non-traditional computing, advanced topics in quantum dot-based computing, until DOE had a reorganization of BES, and 6 months after passing a very strong peer review, we got a different peer review committee and had a negative outcome. And that was, the center was basically reorganized away. I was the only member of this center who survived on BES funding in the DOE BES Engineering Physics program, studying topics in quantum dots, quantum dot charging, metal clusters, and the assembly of these metal clusters onto DNA templates. Also began projects with Predrag Kristich in molecular scale electronics, and with Dick Wood, who is a condensed matter theorist who's now retired from the lab, in studying growth mechanisms of nanotubes and quantum dots. So I won't dwell on these things. I'll just then mention some of my experiences that I did not anticipate when I left here. I didn't anticipate that these kinds of things were possible, but the lab asked me to serve as a legislative fellow in the office of Senator Alexander. Senator Alexander is now the senior senator from Tennessee serving in the U.S. Senate. And he, since he's been a senator, he's asked for a scientist from the lab to be on his staff on a recurring basis to essentially be a scientist advisor on his staff. And I was the third person to do that. The person who's now the 6th person to do that is there now. And so we've had a presence in his office since that time. This is not to arrange funding or anything like that, because obviously that would be a conflict of interest, but it's to provide the point of view of a scientist in an office that otherwise has strategists and politicians and poli-sci majors and these kinds of things. Upon returning back to the lab in 2009, I served for a year as the group leader in the Nanomaterials Theory Institute in the Center for Nanophase Material Sciences, which is one of the 5 DOE nanoscience centers funded by Basic Energy Sciences. And then in 2009, the lab director's office asked me to serve as the director of planning in that office. At Oak Ridge, this is a rotational position where people come in and get a perspective of the laboratory, help the lab director think about the strategic direction of the laboratory, and then another one of these send you off again. Another come and go position. And in 2011, I had the wonderful opportunity to return back to the Center for Computational Science, this time as Director of Science of the Oak Ridge Leadership Computing Facility. I'll tell you what this collection of 4 words means in a moment. And I think thanks to Vasili's question, I've already told you what this job is. Right? So with that, I'm going to go into what was essentially my DAMOP talk from 2013, unless there's any further questions at this time. So the Leadership Computing Facility is a DOE Office of Science program that is located at Oak Ridge National Lab and Argonne National Lab. Its mission is to provide the compute and data infrastructure for the most challenging computational problems. And the policy is that 2 centers provide support for 2 domestic vendors of supercomputing, which has a strategic component to it and also provides for better pricing when the government goes to buy supercomputers. It also provides more opportunity for the scientific community because diverse architectures better suits the needs of a broader variety of users. This time is allocated as a user facility through highly competitive user programs that go by the name INCITE, is one managed by the laboratories, and ALCC is one managed by our sponsor out of the DOE offices in Washington. The projects typically receive 10x or 100x more compute capability than you would receive, for example, from a regional or campus supercomputing center. And for these projects where we allocate large amounts of resources, we have experts in using these computers who are assigned as a liaison to the center to be their advocate, to be their collaborator, and to help increase the chances of success, because using these big machines is not easy. So this is basically how the time is split up. 60% of the time goes to the INCITE program. Across the program, this was 6 billion core hours in 2014. OSCAR is the acronym for our sponsor, Advanced Scientific Computing Research in the DOE Office of Science. And then 10% is used for discretionary resources. That responsibility is actually delegated to me. I lead the committee at our laboratory who allocates that time. We'll use that for 3 purposes: to allow people to have some preliminary results to compete for one of these 2 allocations. It's necessary to have preliminary results because it's a competitive process. We do outreach to new communities, people who are not traditionally users of supercomputers. That includes industry. And also, this is the only place where you get an advantage if you're at Oak Ridge, because for all the rest of the time, as a user facility, everyone has equal access. And this is an international program, like all user facilities. It doesn't really matter where your funding comes from. It doesn't matter where your zip code is, your address. Just like you can be an international user at a light source or a neutron source, you can be an international user at our user facility. And this slide serves to really make the point about our model. Over the years, the amount of time that we've allocated and requested, the red is the amount of time requested in units of core hours. I'll explain this unit to anyone who doesn't understand it, just ask. But the number of projects that are supported in the program stays constant. So as the resource becomes larger, we allocate more time to about the same number of projects. This is what leadership computing means. So over the time in 2004, when the leadership computing program began, the resources have grown by about a factor of 10,000. This has increased our system capability. We've done this with strong partnerships with computer vendors, and we've worked to scale user codes up by a commensurate factor. And we've been successful in delivering science across a broad range of areas. I don't expect you to really read this, but this is my list of some of the high-impact publications that have used our facility, papers in Nature, Science, PhysRev letters, and other interesting topics. I'll just mention that this was a simulation of a supernova that predicted something called a standing accretion shock instability that has to do, as the supernova collapses and then bounces, material continues to fall on the shock wave, and in lower dimensional models it would stall out the shock. And what these people have predicted back in 2003 was that because of convection a instability in multiple dimensions would produce that would allow the shock to further propagate out, but give a rather asymmetric distribution to the matter. And there's been recent experiments from one of the NASA X-ray Observatory showing, measuring directly the distribution of isotopes in Cassiopeia A that seems to confirm for the first time what was predicted on our big capability machine in 2003. So this was a very exciting outcome. These are just some highlights from the facility from 2004, a collection of 6 journal articles published in Nature across a broad range of science, including materials, plasma physics, climate science, and nuclear physics. And in 2003, I did the same exercise, selecting what I thought were some of the most significant publications. Again, climate science, biology, polymer science, superconductivity, and molecular biology. Now, a bit about the hardware. This plot plots the number of cores, compute cores, over a long period of time, over 25 or 30 years, that were sort of the most capable machine at Oak Ridge. Actually, this is the machine I wrote my Ph.D. thesis on, and while I was here at ITAMP, I was using these machines back at Oak Ridge. This dip is actually a real lull in terms of the availability of large-scale computers for science. During this time period is exactly when in the national security space, the Advanced Strategic Computing Initiative really took off at the Western laboratories, Los Alamos, Sandia, Livermore. But in the science regime, there was not that much going on. In 2002, the Japanese fielded the Earth simulator that had a total of 7 times more compute capability than the sum total of all the supercomputers that were of which we were publicly aware in the United States. I can't say anything about the others because I don't know, but I think it's an accurate statement. And so that was 2002. In 2004, the legislation was passed that established the Leadership Computing Facility, and this 2004, this is how the number of cores in the computer has grown. So just a tremendous increase in the parallelism. And so in order to use these large computers, you have to take advantage of all this parallelism, right? And so there are significant hardware trends behind this. Here I plot several different quantities on the same exponential plot under the title "No More Free Lunch." The red line is the number of transistors per unit area. This is essentially the most direct statement of Moore's law. But the blue shows the single thread performance, which is actually leveling off at around 2004, 2005. Likewise, the frequency is being capped here around the same time. The computer vendors are not continuing to scale the frequency. This is essentially because the source drain voltage across the transistor has leakage currents that prevent it to be further scaled down. This is from a computer engineering point of view, this is called Dennard scaling. So Moore's law has continued, but Dennard scaling, the thing that enabled it to utilize all those transistors in an efficient way, such that you would get regular factors of 2 and factors of 3 increases in compute power per single thread, that Dennard scaling stopped in 2004. Okay? And so the power per socket is capped at about 100 watts or 200 watts. Think of it as a 100-watt light bulb. That's what you can handle in a socket. A 100-watt light bulb is pretty hot for those people who remember those things. And the numbers of cores is increasing here. So I can remember when I was here at ITAMP, people would buy computers based on the clock speed. You had a 200 megahertz or a 400 megahertz. And then in 2004, that stopped, right? And then it was dual core, quad core. And that's because the computer vendors stopped making the problem worse. They stopped increasing the compute power, the clock frequency. But that was actually a profound change. So one can say, it's actually 10 years old news now, that computers don't get any faster, and they haven't gotten any faster for something like 10 years. They only get more parallel. Computers don't get any faster, they only get more parallel. And this was identified in a National Research Council report that was published in 2012 called The Future of Computing Performance, Game Over or Next Level. And this is one chart from that NRC report that talks about an expectation gap between what we expect just because we have a checkbook to refresh our hardware, right, that the performance would increase, and what we're going to get in terms of single thread performance. So this is a profound change. I asked Brendan this morning, could you imagine the last 20 years of science if computers hadn't gotten any faster? What would your software look like? Right? And my guess is it would be beautiful.
It would be Abramovich's textbook, analytical calculation.
Yeah. Well said. I'm going to quote this. I'm going to quote this. Right. But our ability to progress with sloppy software has been enabled by exponential growth in single thread computing performance. And that's been over for 10 years. Right? So that's where we are today. Okay? Nevertheless, when we did our requirements in 2009, the number one requirement from our users was increased node performance. This is across broad areas of climate science, astrophysics, fusion, chemistry. Let's put AMO science in there. Combustion, accelerator physics, biology, materials. Or we could put AMO physics over the whole thing if we wish, right? But so everyone still needs more performance per node, even though single thread performance is not getting any faster. And I've already tried to frame this issue as power being the problem, right? The power is the problem. When you scale that 100 watts per socket up to the size of a machine like Jaguar, which was the number one machine in the world in 2009, which was located at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, that results in about 7 megawatts just to operate the machine, okay? Now, a number you may not have in your head is how much money that is, okay? Even in Tennessee, where we have the Tennessee Valley Authority, 1 megawatt consumed over a time of 1 year is about $1 million. It's a very nice scaling. All of us can remember that. 1 megawatt over 1 year is $1 million. So we have a large budget for computing at Oak Ridge, but 7 megawatts is a lot of, $7 million is a lot for just the machine. And there are inefficiencies associated with running the computer center. It's about 20% overhead just to cool, take care of the disk and everything like this. So in round numbers, think $10 million, okay? So if we would have taken Jaguar, which had 300,000 compute cores, x86 compute cores, and tried to satisfy our leadership computing mission need in 2013, which was when we sort of need to increase, we feel the need to increase, using the evolution of that traditional technology, we would have needed to build a machine that was something like 20 petaflops. It would have consumed 30 megawatts of power, okay? And it would have required 4 times the floor space than Jaguar. Jaguar already consumes enough floor space as something like a basketball court. Apologies to those people who are unfamiliar with the game. But it's something, let's see, it's several hundred, it's about 100 square meters or something like this. So this is the machine we did not buy. We did not do this because $30 million for electricity was untenable. So what we did is we embraced a disruptive technology. In 2009, we proposed a hybrid compute machine using the GPU to go along with the CPU in forming the compute node. This is intended to indicate the multi-core CPU chip. In this case, it'd be something like having 6 cores on a processor with associated memory. This is a way you can think of a GPU as being very, very parallel, but with much less capable compute cores. Now, the GPU was invented by NVIDIA to change the color of a pixel on a computer screen. Changing a pixel from green to red is a very parallel act compared to the pixel next door. So they invented a very parallel processor to do that computer graphics. And the research community adopted those processors and made many, many different interesting science and engineering applications look like graphics processing, to the extent that it got the attention of NVIDIA. And NVIDIA then tried to basically develop a secondary business by catering more towards technical computing. And this developed enough so that we were able to say that we'll partner with them and our traditional partners, who were the Cray Computer Corporation and AMD, and produce an upgrade to an upgrade to Jaguar that we call Titan. And this is what I mean by the hybrid compute node. This is the network, and then it's connected to the router. You have this traditional AMD Opteron processor, and then over what is effectively a very slow PCIe Gen 2 bus, the graphics processor. And here's the associated memory with the AMD processor and the memory with the NVIDIA processor. And there's a lot more memory with the AMD than with the GPU. But here is where the floating point operations are in large part, over 90%. So the programming challenge is significant because most of your memory is here, but most of your compute is here, and it's connected over a very slow pipe, right? So that's the challenge. The trade-off has been more difficulty in programming, right, for more energy efficient computing, right? That's the trade-off. Now, over time, the engineers will take care of many of these problems. Over time, all these things will be included on one die, and the computing connection will be much quicker. But this was the upgrade. We actually ripped out the guts of Titan, except for the backplane and the wires, and we increased the compute capability 10x for a marginal 20% increase in the energy consumption. So we basically did that the way we planned. And if my time is up, I haven't kept track of it, I will just say that when we started working on the codes, we had a very common experience, and that is when you try to improve the compute efficiency of these codes, they get faster even on the traditional old hardware, right? So this is an example of a Neutron transport code from Oak Ridge. You have to refactor the code, which means express more and more parallelism to the processor. This refactor code on the old hardware was 2 times faster. And then when we moved it to the XK7, which is the Titan, and compare it to the machine we didn't buy, for those people who are users on the NSF system, you can think of most of the cabinets of Blue Waters at the University of Illinois. The code is 4 times faster. And here is for a set of, this is molecular dynamics application, a combustion application, the neutron transport, and the material science code. These are the kinds of speed ups that we've gotten. This is my time is up. I'll show this, this slide. We put the Titan into full user operations in June of last year. And what I'm tracking here is the percentage of time that's going to applications that are making use of the GPUs, right? And so this is the INCITE program from last year, and this is the INCITE program as it's taking up this year. And you see that the community of users that we're working with are taking up this hardware and are beginning to use it. Okay, I will jump to the end. if you'll be patient with me, I did one experiment. I took the list of names from the TAMOC list of people who associate themselves with TAMOC as users of participants in the theoretical atomic physics community. And I have access to some nice software that can download your papers and then search them for keywords. And I searched them for keywords that would indicate that you would use some supercomputer in the United States, right? And the Ranger is a machine that was at TAC in Texas. Exceed is the NSF program for allocating time. NERSC is the National Energy Research Supercomputing Center at Berkeley, and so on. And this is the number of times those names appeared in papers published by TAMOC over the last 5 years, right? And I can tell you that most of these papers come from, if I could call it, one collaboration centered around one person who recently departed an extended visit at ITAMP. So, and at Oak Ridge, we've only had these projects in the recent years from Mitch and from Barry and Klaus. And so we have actually a call that's open now for INCITE. It closes in June. If you'd like to use the machine or even like to try it out, take it for a test drive, I'd appreciate talking to you. So here's my conclusions. I'm very grateful for the opportunity and the relationships availed by my ITAMP postdoc. Leadership computing is a policy that says we're going to provide the most capable compute and data infrastructure for the most critically important problems that need it. And this accelerated hybrid multi-core computing solution is performing well on real complex scientific applications, but you got to work for it. And our resources are available to everyone as long as it's not illegal because you were born in an unfortunate place. But largely for the people who are present in the scientific and engineering community, we're available for your use. So with that, I'll stop.
So yeah, if we wanted to use something there, what kind of preparation would we need? What kind of things would you look for in a proposal? What do we need to do ahead of time?
So I can extend to you some amount of discretionary time, but we need to know that you'll have a good experience, right? And so having a code that's ready to use MPI would be an important one. Having a code that has a robust checkpoint restart capability would be important. And then that's a good place to start, right?
Quick question, Jack. Is there any impact on this from private industry, cloud computing, data centers, all that? I mean, are they competing with you? Are you ahead?
Well, we're not going to compete with private industry, to be sure, right? That would not be our mission. We have a very good outreach to industry. In 2009, we had 29 projects led by industry operational at Oak Ridge. Cloud computing is growing, to be sure, but the capability that Titan provides of having a tightly coupled network is not something that's actually available in industry. There was a study also done by Berkeley Laboratory a few years ago called the Magellan Project that actually compared the DOE supercomputers like NERSC and OLCF to a cloud computing environment and drew the comparisons.
Does the code need to be GPU capable, or do you guys provide any help?
Yeah, we provide training and we can provide collaboration where it makes sense. It doesn't need to be GPU accelerated at the beginning, right? But this kind of hardware accelerator is one of the trends you're going to want to pay attention to. I didn't talk about the Intel Microprocessor, but in the NSF supercomputing system, the TAC machine Stampede has a mic accelerators that's available to many people in the community.
Maybe a last question for Annie. I think, Jack, you should stress that if you do work hard on your code and translate them into computer Fortran or C, the benefits really are very beneficial because we got speeds up a factors 10, 15 in our matrix codes for matrix multiplication alone.
So I'm very happy that Brendan is one of our users and he's having good results, but it takes work.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we should stop here. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you for the opportunity.